Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. My name is Hannah Conover, and I'm the Executive Director of Grant Ready Kentucky. And today we're going to have a free demonstration webinar with the Kentucky Center for Statistics. I want to also thank our collaborators, Matt Coleman, who is the Rural Project Manager at the Kentucky Office of Rural Health. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us today, but he was a big part of planning this, as well as Melissa Vermillion, who is the Dean of Institutional Effectiveness, Planning, and Research at Hazard Community and Technical College. So thanks for being here with us today, Melissa. A couple of housekeeping items. We are recording this session, and we will be sharing the link with everyone who registered to attend. We should also have some time at the end of the presentation for some Q&A. So feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat. In the meantime, we ask that everyone remain muted until we get to the Q&A portion. Our guest today is Jessica Fletcher, who is the Director of Marketing and Analytics at KYSTATS, and she's going to be teaching us how to find and request Kentucky-specific data within the KYSTATS system. We know that supporting data is, of course, a really important part of any strong grant proposal, and we're excited to learn how to access this great data resource. So with that, I will turn it over to Jessica so she can share more with us.
Well, thank you, Hannah. Really excited to be able to share some of this great information. I often say that KYSTATS is one of Kentucky's best known secrets. We're actually really well known more on the national stage because of our state's longitudinal data system that we work with the U.S. Department of Education and some other national partners on. But we've actually been here in Kentucky since 2013 when we were created by state statute. And our main mission is to collect and link data to evaluate education and workforce efforts here in Kentucky. And what that means is our team of about 50 web developers and research analysts develop reports. We respond to research requests and provide statistical data analyses about workforce and education to policymakers, practitioners, and the general public. So the main place that you will find our work is at kystats.ky.gov. And over the course of the presentation, I will go through some of the reports that we have. But just if you're ever, wondering about where you can find information about our data reports, the quickest and easiest thing to do is to go to our website, or you can always reach out to me. My email address is super easy. I'm just jfletcher@ky.gov. And I can help direct you to people who will be able to answer your questions regarding the information you need for grant applications. But so with that, I will just talk briefly a little bit more about our work and the data that we receive. We are governed by this governing board. So we have the Education of Labor and Education, the Cabinet for Education and Labor is our board chair, but also on our board, you'll see that we have Commissioner Jason Glass, who is over the Kentucky Department of Education, Dr. Aaron Thompson, who is over the Council on Post-Secondary Education, the president of the Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority, and the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. Now, the newest addition to that board was the Secretary for Cabinet for Health and Family Services. And you'll see that means that we are starting to get some data outside of education and workforce. So as you can see from this very kind of overwhelming slide, that we mean for it to be overwhelming, because we really want to convey how much state data that we do receive. So we have everything from K-12 information from the education department. We also have Bureau of Labor Statistics information. And as I mentioned, from the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, we have early learning information, SNAP and TANF data, and Medicaid data. So lots of things go into what we call the Kentucky longitudinal data system, which a very simple way to explain that is the birth to workforce continuum that a Kentuckian travels throughout the course of their life. So, we have birth records, so we know, we can basically say, okay, in 2010, this cohort of students was born, they entered the workforce at this, about 5 years later, and then we can basically follow those students throughout the course of their education trajectory. So I'll get into that in a little bit later, but just to kind of give you a background on some of the things that we are focusing on over the next couple of years are on our research agenda, our access, usage, and usability. We also try to apply an equity lens to everything we do. So that really means kind of breaking down where students and people in the workforce are coming from background wise. So that can mean anything from geography to socioeconomic status to race and ethnicity. Really lots of different ways that we can kind of peel back the layers of data and study individual populations. We're also really working to understand the impact of significant events in Kentucky. So over the next couple of years, you'll definitely be seeing work from us regarding the COVID pandemic, regarding the tornadoes in Western Kentucky and the floods in Eastern Kentucky. So really trying to figure out how those events have impacted the population and changed the education workforce trajectories for students and Kentuckians. And then lastly, we're really working to kind of expand our modeling and prediction, which means, we're trying to look to the future to figure out what certain things will mean 5, 10, 20 years down the line. So stay tuned for that, because we're really trying to be cognizant of what's happening in the workforce with things like the teacher shortage, and we'll be releasing reports on the teacher shortage in the coming weeks and months. So as I mentioned, the equity lens that we apply to a lot of our work really breaks down these different metrics. So backgrounds of students, experience of students, and that means things like our K-12 students being introduced to things like AP courses and dual credit courses before they enter college. So we can kind of tell outcomes if students have had those experiences or not and compare those. But like I said, we also really try to look at rural versus urban students, or students from Eastern Kentucky versus Western Kentucky. So lots of different ways. And, if you have a research question that you're trying to answer, you can always come to us and see if we have that information available and how we can help you analyze the data. One thing people always ask about when we're talking about our work is, can people be identified, or, is anybody's personal information like their social security number at risk? And the answer to that is no. We take de-identifying data very, very seriously. We take privacy super seriously. All of our data is stored in a state data warehouse that is, protected by firewalls, and it's even hard for us as employees to access. So we have a process that's a little too technical for me to really articulate here, but we tried to put a slide together so that you can see that we do take care in making sure that there are not personal identifiers attached to any of our data. If you go to our website, you will see let's go to this next slide. So this is what our data request form looks like. So if you go to this page and say you want to receive some information from us, we can provide this de-identified data. we cannot provide anything with identifiers. So if you're looking for a group of specific students or workforce people, like by name or social security number, that's not something that we do. But if you do go to this page and, submit a request to us, that it's most likely going to not have a charge attached to it. A lot of people want to know, well, how much does this cost? This is such great information. And, a lot of, for-profit firms will charge you to find this data, but all of this stuff is publicly available and we provide it at no charge. Now, there are some times that we do have to charge, but it's usually because an organization or institution has asked us to put together a dashboard or something where we're taking their data and either incorporating it into our system or creating a dashboard or a way for people to disaggregate what is behind all of the data. So if that takes significant staff time for us, sometimes there is a little bit of a charge, but for the most part, we will only ask for reimbursement of staff time. So it's hard. I know some of the people who registered for the conference did ask that question. It's hard to give a dollar figure, like, we don't charge, $40 per hour or anything like that. It's really, we charge on a case-by-case basis. But if you ever have any of those larger projects, reach out to us and we will definitely work with you on the best case scenario. Let's see, I skipped over one slide just a second ago, and this really just shows kind of what the topics of some of our reports are. So every month we're the agency who releases the state's labor force participation and unemployment rate. So when that comes out from the state, that's actually something that our office works on. And we also have several dashboards on our website, which I'll explain in a bit, that kind of drill down into that information and let you sort of play with what different counties look like, what local workforce areas look like, and try to get really focused just on certain regions of the state. This is our reports page. So when you go to kystats.ky.gov, you are going to come to the home page, and if you click on the reports tab, this is where all of this data is stored. So we do categorize it by whether it's in adult education, K-12 education, or early childhood. And then there's also a few different workforce and post-secondary tabs that you can go to sort of drill down and get a little bit more fine-tuned in what you might be searching for. So to start off with one of our more popular reports, the early childhood profile provides data about early childhood metrics in each county. So, the numbers that you're seeing on this screen are actually statewide. So basically you would say 36.8% of students are ready for kindergarten when they enter. That number changes based on what county you're in. So whether you're in Jefferson County or Hazard, that number is always going to be a little bit different just depending on where you are. And the profile dashboard allows you to toggle the different counties and find information related to your local area. The same goes for our high school feedback report. This allows users to explore data to determine if high school graduates were successful in earning higher education credentials and gaining employment, whether that's after post-secondary or with no post-secondary. Once again, these are statewide scores, but if you want to find out what your district looks like or what your local workforce area looks like with this report, you would just go and toggle to the county that you are searching for. This report also allows you to get really specific, as I was talking about some of the equity indicators. You know, you can compare metrics like male and female students, or whether a student received free and reduced price lunch or not, and kind of see the different outcomes for college completion, college going, and that sort of thing. The career and technical education feedback report is very similar to the high school feedback report, except for it's very tailored to CTE programs. So things like the career pathways that each of the schools offer. This provides some more detailed information than you will find on the high school feedback report. It's also very tailored to local workforce area and districts across the state. So you can drill down these metrics a little bit more once you actually get into the report. And when we're done going through the slides, I will kind of show you how to toggle through some of the reports. The CTE Employee Connector helps employers and educators find CTE programs near them. So a lot of times you'll have a business who really needs to tap into a pipeline of students who might be looking for a job in a year or two. So this tool kind of helps businesses figure out what districts are training people for programs like welding and HVAC, that sort of thing. It's a really, you know, locally based program that helps people drill down into what they're looking for. So these three reports are more workforce based and less education focused. I kind of we'll walk through some of the things, but what I really wanted to point out were, I know a lot of times when you're writing a grant, you're asked to give specific information about certain populations. So this worker report is one of the better resources we have that kind of talks about Kentucky's overall population, or populations down into local workforce areas or workforce planning areas, or even also lets you drill down into the county level, which you can see right here. So this one specifically will show your total population, your veteran population, how many people are below the poverty line, what the median household income is for those counties, what the workforce participation rate is, and some more education metrics like those without high school diplomas or those with associates or more at the post-secondary level. So like I said, this is one of the great places to go. Like if you're really just looking to drill down into certain metrics for a county, this is a great tool to access. The Kentucky Workforce Dashboard is very similar, but it also allows you to kind of look at the local workforce area numbers for unemployed persons, people with disabilities, those in the homeless population, and really helps to pinpoint some of those numbers for you at the local level. The Future Skills Report is one that is more projection based. So we basically try to look at the next 5 years of employment and figure out like how many openings we have across the state and how many jobs will be open in the future. You can also kind of look at this one from an occupation standpoint. So if you're interested in figuring out how many healthcare workers might be needed, for example, that's the kind of data that you can find in this report. That's the bulk of what is on our website, but I will first stop to take questions, and then we might go through a couple of live demos on the site. But first, let me pause and see what questions you all have.
We have had a couple come through in the chat. The first one is, how current is the data? Up to what year are we looking at?
So it varies by report. So we're constantly getting data in from different data sources. So some reports you will see go back to 2021. Some have been updated more recently, and we will have 2022 data. But it really just depends on the report. The best way to kind of figure that out is when you are actually in the report itself, it usually is stated in that top line. Now, if you can't find that information like right on the page, sometimes you can go into what we call tech notes, and that will tell you exactly where we're pulling all of the data from and how recent it is. But the main thing to remember there, it just varies on what you're looking for, because we get things constantly from different organizations, and are constantly updating our system with the most recently available. But data is a slow moving world. So, you're really not going to see much 2023 data. Most things will be at least a year behind.
Makes sense. And then Melissa, I think you had a question about DCBS reports.
Yes, you mentioned SNAP benefits, TANF benefits, things of that fashion. I'm interested in whether or not there is information by county on what percentages of individuals receive those benefits. I'm always looking at poverty rates and things like that. It would be nice to have another measure to show a percentage of folks that are receiving supplemental assistance.
Yeah, that is actually one of the newer adds to our system. So I don't think you'll find that in a lot of our publicly available reports.
Is that something we can request?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely. I know that we're constantly working on integrating that into our system. So if you have a specific request, even if it's just what percentage of what county receives SNAP benefits, we could probably find that for you. So the best thing to do there is just email me, and I will forward it to one of our research team, and we will help you find that answer.
Thank you.
Kind of along those same lines, Mary's trying to find data that shows early intervention for children under the age of 5 to increase kindergarten readiness. Is that something that you have on the kindergarten readiness report, or what is the term intervention?
That's the early childhood profile. I believe that is on there. Most of these pages, or most of the reports, have several pages to them. So even if you go to the report, you don't see it on the front page, click on the individual tabs within that report and you may find that information. If not, like I said, just forward it to me and we can help see what's available to help you answer that.
Regarding DCBS, is there information, like if we wanted to know how many children by county are in foster care, or is there any way to know what the ages are, like age, brackets that are in foster care? So for instance, if some of our grant programs, we can have some priority if we are serving, students who have been in foster care or are in foster care. So we might be interested, for instance, in a 16 or 17-year-old that might be in foster care so that we can help them get through and then matriculate to higher ed. So is there information like that?
I am trying to pull up.
Oh, I see foster youth. Okay.
This one, I don't know that it breaks down by county, but in most cases, the county level information is available, even if it's not showing on this report.
Okay, so if we see something and it doesn't go deep enough, again, that might be a request.
Correct.
Okay.
So I feel like we do have that somewhere, but like I said, it just might not be easily available on one of our online reports.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that is something that we do have information on, and it's already been integrated. The homeless number, I also think like we do get some of this from both KDE and CHFS as well.
Can you scroll down to justice involved?
Yes, that is one of our newer data sources, as well as the Department of Corrections. We're working on getting youth corrections as well. So that's not something you see now, but it's something that we will have moving forward.
Also curious if you have any breakout about folks that are not participating in the labor market. So we have labor market participation rates. So the converse of that number, the folks that aren't, can we get any deeper dive on that population?
Yes, I'm trying to find our civilian labor force report. So this provides information on unemployment rate, civilian labor force, employment, and unemployment. And it goes back quite a ways, so all the way back to 2000. And then it also breaks down county by county.
But we really don't know if they're not participating. We don't have a lot of detail about them. So we don't know how many of those are justice involved, how many are, is it addiction? You know, how many of them are stay-at-home mothers, you know, because there are some numbers that could distort that.
Yeah, so that's a perfect example of where we would really want to kind of help you provide a detailed report. So if you're trying to find those numbers, of course, there's always going to be caveats in our data, things that we can't account for, or things that, you know, could mean one thing or another. And we never feel like we can speak to either one of those. So we'll basically give you the raw numbers. And if it's something you want to project on, feel free to, but we try to kind of stay out of the, well, this could be because of this business.
I project all the time.
We try to keep it to ourselves when we do, but we're only human, right?
Jessica, I'm also thinking about timing. You know, when we're looking at grant proposals, we often have a short period of time that we can pull that together, including the data. And so if someone is looking on the website and they're not seeing the report and they think they're going to need to make a data request, what does that timeline look like, or how far in advance do you all like to see those requests?
It's usually a very quick turnaround. So if it's just pooling data, like pulling things from the census data, for example, is one of the quickest things we do. Like I've sent a request over to our research team and gotten something back in a matter of minutes. If you want something that's really detailed, though, that's the kind of things that we need time to both analyze, but also to run through our very extensive review process to make sure everything is right. So if, you know, you've asked us to help build a dashboard, for example, that might take a month or two just because of the turnaround and the review process itself. But if it's just, hey, I can't find this on your site, can you send me Rockcastle County information on the homeless population? That's something that we can pull pretty quickly as long as the right people are in the office that day.
That's faster than I thought. And I also didn't realize that you could help pull like census data. That's really helpful too.
Yeah, that's one thing people just don't realize, that, you know, it's publicly available on the US Census Bureau site, but we have people who are so familiar with the data that I can say, hey, we need this, and they know exactly which table it is when there are thousands of American Community Survey tables out there. And Barrett on our team usually knows exactly the one you mean. So Barrett Ross on our team is a great resource. If you can't get me for whatever reason, Barrett can always help.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Let's see. I didn't see any other questions in the chat. Did anybody else have anything else before you kind of show us some of the things right on the website?
So can everybody still see my screen? I've got the civilian labor force pulled up. Okay.
Yes.
The little green highlight that was around it before is not there, so.
Now take us back though, if you don't mind, Jessica, take us back to the main website and show us how to get, from place to place.
So I will go all the way back to the homepage. So this is what our homepage looks like on a smaller screen. Here are the various menu tabs that we have. So if you want to just find out more about our work, the various grants that fund us, our staff members, that sort of thing, that's all under About KYSTATS. The reports page is the one that I showed you earlier. Now the labor market information is where you will go to find employment and wages by occupations, unemployment claims data. All of that is available usually on a monthly basis. So these things are more frequently updated than what you will see on the main report site. We usually have 1 to 2 reports come out per month, but those usually are the kind of reports that are only updated once or twice a year. But the monthly unemployment claims are updated every month when we update the unemployment rates for the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So scooting back one, you also can navigate to some of our bigger reports from the homepage. So whether it's the Work Ready Communities report, the civilian labor force, you just click on full report and it takes you straight to the latest version of that. So this post-secondary feedback is one that we have done that we just updated in March. So this is fairly new data. So student origins, students who have entered the post-secondary system as of 2022. But you'll see as you kind of dig into this report that some of the data is staggered a little bit further back, because it also looks at things like when people entered the system, what their graduation rates were, and what their workforce outcomes are 3, 5, and 10 years after graduation. So obviously the further you're looking to figure out like what their outcomes are, the further back you're going to have to go for their educational records. So this one I think is full of really interesting information about wages and college majors. So for example, your education majors have some of the highest employment outcomes of all of the other industries. 3 years after college graduation, you have a 68.6 employment rate. Of course, they drop as people, change careers and things like that. But this is a really good place to go just to find out like what industry standard wages for people 3, 5, and 10 years after college.
Can I ask a question really quick? Looking at that report, where would personal care services fall in that?
Can you expand on personal care, like healthcare?
Well, I sent you, I sent you a private chat earlier because it's not relevant to this webinar, but I'll just say it now. I had extreme difficulty obtaining data on licensed cosmetologists for the state of Kentucky. At the time that I contacted the State Board of Cosmetology, they said they had an archaic system and they didn't really have anybody who could extract the data. I got a little more help about 6 months ago, but a hairstylist, a massage therapist, that sort of thing tends to fall under personal care. And I couldn't find it here either. So it was really kind of a bear trying to find enough data to support what we were asking for.
Sure.
Most of the cosmetologists in the state of Kentucky are self-employed. Right. So data is not collected on wages from payroll tax reports because there are very few who work on a payroll.
So Occupational Outlook, I think might have some information, but you also have to kind of think like, is personal care or cosmetology the category that you would look for in all cases, because sometimes, you know.
It generally is. I mean, I went through the census data, I went through some state of Kentucky workforce data, in another report, and everything that I found put them under personal care services. But it was just really difficult. I couldn't even get, it was very difficult to get the number of licensed salons and individuals by county.
Mhm.
So I actually did wind up getting a little bit of help from the director of the state board.
Mhm.
And I think that, you know, that was very, very helpful. If I hadn't had that, I'm not sure what I would have done, but just to have a count of some of those licensed occupations that are non-healthcare.
I think that this personal care and service occupation, and what I'm going off of is that median wage. I feel like I bet you that's what this is, Ryla, because
Well, I think you're right, Melissa, because everything that I saw, every data tool that I saw grouped that by number into the personal care and service occupations. And the trick for things like cosmetology is that for our purposes in education, of course, it's categorized as low income. Whereas if you go talk to a self-employed cosmetologist,
oh
they
yeah,
laugh.
I know.
Because they're all self-employed, so their payroll data, you know, the data comes from payroll data reported to the state, and of course, the majority of them are not on a payroll. They're self-employed, they're business owners, or, you know, so it's kind of decimated all the cosmetology programs because everybody thinks it's a low income profession.
Well,
And my mother was a cosmetologist, so, you know.
I hear you. I understand I understand. And that's something just to think about in data as overall, and Jessica, you might be able to speak to this, is, for example, Ryla's problem is when we are trying to find data to support a cause, you know, a project, you know, things of that fashion, you know, sometimes the data doesn't say what we want it to say. For example, that the average wage for a cosmetologist is $25,000 a year. I assure you that my hairdresser makes more than $25,000 a year.
Nearly all of them, except for the ones who started out at the franchises and are on payrolls, you know, and they're paid a low hourly rate.
So that's where you would look at like the 3-year, 5-year, 10-year breakdowns. That would provide you a little bit better view of what the median wage was, at least as far as 10 years out. So your median wage for those different experience levels are going to vary greatly.
So then that leads me to another question. Where does that data come from for the 10 years out into the workforce?
Is it the Bureau of Labor Statistics?
Yes.
Then that has the same problem because they're also capturing payroll data and not self-employment data.
So I've got somebody sitting outside my office who I'm going to drag in here. If you'll allow me to go on mute for just a second, I can get a little bit more detail on here, unless Hannah, you want to move on to something else, and we can come back to that, and I can email you offline. Either way.
We can do, just don't sideline the webinar on my account. You'll have my email address, so you can just contact me after if you have a chance to look at it.
Okay.
I do think that's a perfect example, though, of you know, having somebody that we can contact when we come across these unique situations, and at least, even if the data doesn't exist, I feel like the experts at KYSTATS will be able to tell us what does exist.
And sometimes that's a great answer. Like if that's a question that is on a grant application, and you say, you know, we've looked into this, you know, this isn't publicly available, or, you know, we can't really kind of come to the answer that you're looking for, but you know, what we can do is say XYZ about people, you know, 10 years into their career, for example. Right. So, you know, even sometimes that answer is better than just skipping the question altogether.
Absolutely. At least tells us the universe of what's out there, which is so much more helpful than sometimes trying to dig around by yourself and find that information. So great questions. Any other specific questions that we want to look at before we look at some more of the dashboards?
So, I do want to kind of point out the adult ed feedback report. This report deals specifically with, adults returning to school for their GED. But it goes a little bit more beyond that because it's not necessarily just GED enrollees. It's people who are retraining for certain careers, but maybe not enrolling in post-secondary education. So all of that information is available here. We also have some local information about local adult ed providers that is publicly available here based on the KCTCS schools or any of the other adult ed providers here in Kentucky. So that's a good one that I think people kind of forget about. And then of course, K-12 has some really, other than high school feedback report, we dig into the Work Ready dual credit scholarship and you know, really try to drill down into some of the outcomes for that public scholarship that's available for high school students. And the dual credit feedback report is another one that's interactive, and it allows you to look county by county at students who have enrolled in dual credit over the past few years. Let's pull that one up. This is one I like because it allows you to like click directly on a county and get a little bit more information about the students who have enrolled and what those outcomes are. So a really cool piece to just play around with a bit. One thing I did want to point out is if you go, and it's very hard to see because you have to scroll all the way to the bottom of the screen. But if you ever want to get an image from one of these reports to, you know, paste into one of your applications, you go to the bottom and click on image, PDF or PowerPoint, and save some of those images straight from some of these reports. Another way to capture some of this information in aggregate form would be to go to where it says on the reports page, if there's a public access data file button, that is going to download all of the Excel files that are in the background of the Tableau report that you're seeing on the screen. So that's a great way to, you know, look at it a little bit differently. I know I've worked with some people who just say some of the dashboards don't make sense to them. They would rather just look at the raw numbers. So you can easily do that without having to contact us. So that's one cool thing. All of our reports are supposed to be very accessible. So, you know, if you're dealing with populations who are using screen readers or, you know, have colorblind issues, all of our reports are really run through that accessibility filter as well, so that, you know, you shouldn't have any trouble reading these if you need any sort of assistance.
Jessica, can you show us again how we get a chart out of a report? Because that was actually going to be one of my next questions. Is there's some really cool charts. How do I put them in my grant application?
If you're on one of the reports pages, you scroll all the way to the bottom. So sometimes there might even be white space like there is on this one. This little download key, if you click on it, it will give you three options. I usually will need an image or a PDF. And if you just click that, it's basically gonna just give you a JPEG of or I'm sorry, it's a PNG file of what is on the screen.
That's awesome. And then is there a certain way in terms of citing Kentucky Stats as a source that you all recommend or prefer, or
we usually just, like, I know CPE sources us a lot, so they'll just, you know, put on a slide or whatever source and spell out Kentucky Center for Statistics, parentheses, KYSTATS.
Awesome. That's a really cool feature, getting to be able to pull either the raw data or the images, because I'm a data nerd too. I often like to look at the raw data and remanipulate it. So that's really helpful.
Yeah, because we're all just humans trying to make the data as easy to understand as possible, but sometimes my brain isn't going to interpret numbers the same as yours is. So a lot of times that's the best way to do it. I did mention earlier the tech notes are where you can go in each report and find out what the sources of data are. So for the dual credit report, if you click on tech notes, you'll get a lot of definitions, a lot of sources, and in some cases, like some of the formulas that we use to calculate various numbers. And it's taking a minute to download, but probably means there's a lot of complications in this one. So yeah, it kind of walks you through what is in it, but in a very technical sense. We are working to create a blog. I've talked about this to several groups before, but we're trying to get a little better at being more narrative about some of our data and some of the research that we're doing. So in the next month or so, we're hoping to go live with a blog where we have a place to better do like some written analyses and reports on some of the work that we're doing here. So yeah, this is a great example of, spelling out the data sources in one individual report. And also talking about like how we are defining things like dual credit enrollment. Because how we define it might not necessarily be the same definition that is used on a national level, for example. But we're trying to stick to things at the state level, like how KDE and CPE define dual credit would be how we would define it. Let's go back, and I will just once again open it up and see if there's anything else you all would like me to walk through in our last few minutes together.
Show us just from the main homepage if someone wants to request data, how they can do that from the website.
Yep, that is under our, I believe it's about. No, I'm wrong. Request data has its own tab.
That makes it easy.
Yes. So this form that you fill out, it will send an email to us once you finish it up. And there's a little more information than just putting your name and a question in there to help us better be guided to, best serve you. If you don't know how to answer some of these questions, you can always reach out to us before you hit submit. Or you can just do your best, and if we have questions, we will contact you. But it gets really detailed as to like how far back you go. This shows you how far back our data goes internally for things like education data, but as you saw, it goes back a lot further if you're looking for things like labor statistics. We do have a little bit further back than 2004 for that. Let's click on the other aggregate form. It's very similar.
And then I think we had one last question. If we could take a look at early childhood readiness, if that's a report.
The CP report with lots of different data sources. And it's one of our more frequently visited as well. Was there something specific you're looking for in this one?
No, I just want to see how the information is laid out. What you have. There are times when I write for the CAC and our supporting programs, and I write for Southern Indiana too. So I'm going into their dashboard, statistical dashboard as well. So just kind of want to see, because sometimes I talk about children in a specific group. Sometimes it's positive.
I have a question.
This one is a good example of where it looks, 2018 was a long time ago, but this dashboard is actually showing where students who were kindergartners in 2018 were by third grade. So that's why there's a longer data lag in that availability rate on this chart.
And also probably we'll talk about, or try to figure out how to talk about COVID's impact on, I mean, that's a really big one when people say, so what did that do?
Yeah. And this, you'll see we have kindergarten readiness up through 2022. So, you can go back to 2019 or 2020 and see how that changes from 2020 to 22.
And we could dig down by county, right? You said, or is that a special request if I wanted to pull the 7 counties served in Kentucky by our organization?
So looking just at Estill County. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I do have a question about that page. Under the kindergarten readiness scores, it says ready with interventions. I went to the technical notes and read what that definition is, but I'm still confused by it. So I've been trying to use that information to say that our services, our early intervention services, are preparing children for kindergarten readiness. So is it accurate for me to say that using that data right there?
That is a question that I would love to ask our researchers, especially since it's not clear in the tech notes. If you want to forward that to me, I will send it to the person who worked on that report and see how he defines that for you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd be interested too, because that's what we're doing. We're intervening.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure it has to do with how it's defined in, I believe those come from the Brigance test. So however it's defined within Brigance would be what those mean, but I would definitely want the actual researcher to answer that and not me.
You said you wanted us to send you our email?
Yes, go ahead and if one of you just wants to email me and copy the other one, that would be fine too.
Okay, I'd like to send the email. Jessica, I don't have your email.
Oh, other Jessica.
Yeah, the other Jessica.
I was sending this directly to you, Jessica.
Okay.
Me, that is my address here at Family and Children's Place.
Okay. Well, why don't you just both email me and then I'll connect all the dots.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's always nice to be able to add something new to the story, because I mean, we collect data, but within a bigger, on our clients that we serve, but in a bigger picture, it would be nice.
Well, and that's one thing, like, we really like to do things like this. So, we know that all of our dashboards aren't perfect, and there are more you can come up with more questions and answers sometimes when you do look at data. But just by kind of taking feedback, we're constantly looking for ways to where we can improve these moving forward.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I really appreciate your time. Any last thoughts from anyone before we wrap up our hour?
I would just encourage, I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint again and just remind you all that we have a mailing list. So every time we update a new report, Or, once we get our blog up and running, when we post new blogs, if you just go to that page where you can join our mailing list, you will be added and receive those updates as they come out.
So just one last thing before we part company is that I believe Hannah may be sending some like a follow-up email after this. One of the things that we're also doing, as in addition to the webinars and helping provide other data sources, is we're offering 1 free hour of coaching regarding either a novice who is just getting into the grant world, or if you have very specific questions about a grant application, that you have the ability to sign up for 1 free hour of coaching. So be watching for that flyer that Hannah will be sending out, and make sure that you take advantage of that.
Yes, and we will be recording this, and we will also send the link to this recording. And Jessica, do you mind if we share your slides as well?
No, go right ahead.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jessica. I know I've learned a couple of things today, and really appreciate the Kentucky Stats resource.
Yep. And just always keep us in mind if you have any deeper questions. We're glad to dig into things and help you kind of do research as you go.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.